Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here today. It's Thursday, and my name is Sean Stiers. I am joined by Jesse Stiers. We've got plenty of Notre Dame football we're going to talk about today. We're on the eve of the South Bend Cubs opening up their season. We've got South Bend Cubs baseball coming up tomorrow right here on this station, Sports Radio, WSBT. If you're still driving around in your car and you're listening to us on the AM side, well, that's okay, but you can also now listen on 96.1 FM. We are back on the FM frequency, which is good. You in the baseball spirit these days, Jesse, with the weather trying to crack it a little bit, trying to get a little warm?
Definitely in the baseball spirit. Coincidentally, the Cubs are coming to town this weekend to Cleveland. It's going to be Cleveland's opening weekend. They always start out on the West Coast with some series against Seattle and the Dodgers. And so this weekend, Chicago's coming to town. So I'm pretty excited for that. Probably will go find a cheap ticket on Easter Sunday and probably go to the matinee game on Saturday night. But I was watching a baseball game today, and something really grinded my gears. I always like to ask these questions to
what
see
grinds my gears?
Yeah. I got to see if I'm the one going crazy or, if I'm turning into a big just like get off my lawn type of guy. But
Could be.
The Royals were playing the Twins, game 3 of the set, day game today.
Saw
First
part
of
of it.
all,
Just a little window.
I like the gold belts that some of the Royals players wear, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed those. Those look pretty slick. But anyways, let me get back to the point.
Yep.
Royals pitcher Cole Aragans, I think it was like the 5th inning, starts it out the inning with a 4-pitch walk. Second batter, he works like a 3-1 count. So he's pitched 7 balls out of 8 pitches. And then he stops the game for a mound fix. He requests a mound fix in the middle of the 5th inning. And it's like, buddy, it's not my fault that you've thrown 7 of 8 balls. If you wanted the mound fix, I feel like that's something you do when you're warming up or between innings. I don't know. It didn't sit right with me that the pitcher was like, I'm throwing too many balls right now. Can I get someone to come out here in the middle of the inning and fix the mound? Like, both guys are pitching on it. I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way.
Interesting take. I guess there was a pretty bad rain last night in Kansas City. The part of the broadcast I was watching, one of the Royals players, I can't remember if it was Caglione, maybe, like had gone out and he bought like dozens of donuts for everyone on the ground crew for working on the field after yesterday. So I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it.
But
I don't know.
It's the 5th inning, if these issues were prominent.
You know how pitchers are, a little fidgety. You got to have something to blame all those balls on, right?
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure after the mound fix, he started throwing it. But it's just like, again, I don't like that stuff middle of the inning. Like, you've committed to the inning. I think you should have to get through the inning.
So just suck it up. And by the way, it's not nearly as bad as high school once it starts raining and everything that a high school.
Right, they've got tarp. They've got, the top level clay. They've got everything you need to have a nice mound.
Yeah.
Yeah, paid grounds crew. I don't know. Maybe I am turning into Vince. I just did the inning started. You've committed to the conditions. After the inning, we can maybe address this.
Hey, throw strikes. That's all I'm looking for. If it's in his head a little bit, I mean, guys, it would be in their head deep. It's like start stalking around and pacing around and kicking the mound, and it's like, come on, come out of here and fix it. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe you're tilting a little bit into Vince range with that. I would agree with that. I don't like the Twins' new helmets, like the M on the helmet logo. I like the jersey look that they were wearing today. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit too Miami Marlins looking with the M that they've got. I like the old school Twin Cities TC that they've got. I don't like what they were wearing today.
I agree with you. I think some of these MLB teams are trying to like rebrand a little bit and they're overthinking it. Just stick with the classic nostalgic stuff. I think you keep the TC, but then you maybe revamp what's around the TC. It's like It's like for example, your Kansas Jayhawks. They keep the Jayhawk, but there's like 50 different variations of the Jayhawk.
Right. You got the old Jayhawk, the new Jayhawk, the baby Jayhawk. You've got all different kinds of Jayhawk.
You got the long leg Jayhawk. You got the big head Jayhawk.
Right. Right. Well, we are going to get into some Marcus Freeman comments coming up here in a minute. As we start the show, though, the big news of the day today, not unexpected, Jalen Haralson from the Notre Dame men's basketball team is going into the transfer portal. This is something that Tom Noy from the South Bend Tribune reported a couple of weeks ago that this was going to happen, and there are still more to come. I think the most interesting part, though, Joe Tipton, who covers not most interesting, but look,
significant.
I would say this. I know a lot of people are going to blame Micah Shrewsbury, and he definitely has his share of the blame in the state of the program right now. Hasn't had a winning season in 3 years. It's only been 3 years since he took the job. But Joe Tipton, who covers basketball for On3, tweeted today that a Big Ten coach told him, if you're under $12 million in terms of your NIL / roster budget, you're in trouble in college basketball. Well, based on everything that I've heard, Notre Dame has about a fourth of that. And again, like things that I have heard, people I have talked to, this has less to do about Shrewsbury and more to do with the fact that guys are not even getting market value. Like, you can't keep a roster together with the kind of money that is not being put into the program right now. I think that is ultimately the biggest issue that they've got.
Yeah, that's 100% the biggest issue. And I think it should be emphasized that this isn't necessarily breaking news because of the article that Tom Noy published, a few weeks back. We knew this situation was coming. I think maybe sometimes as fans, you kind of tone some stuff out or block it because you don't want to hear the bad stuff until it actually happens. And now it's actually happening. And, he's going to be gone. Serta's going to be gone. Burton's going to be gone. I'm more or less excited for the news where players come out of the transfer portal to Notre Dame, because that's going to be the next step. All these guys are going to go in, and then Notre Dame's going to get a brand new team.
Are you really going to be that excited when you see, I was going to say High Point, but that's not even probably realistic right now. The St. Bonaventure guy transferring to Notre Dame, if you're lucky to get that, I don't know.
So you're telling me the roster could be full of Carson Touts next season?
Could be. I mean, again, if you're shopping at Kmart, and your budget is Kmart, you're not going to go to Macy's, right? If your budget is Kmart, you're not going to you can't go to Macy's to do your shopping because you can't afford anything. And at this point, the expectation is that both Marcus Burton and Cole Serta are going to be leaving as well. And next Tuesday is the official date that the transfer portal opens, and it'll be open until the 22nd of April. But we expect more. And is Kmart completely closed? Is that a completely dated reference? No, I just thought maybe they, they closed in, well, you know what I'm saying anyway. But yeah, I don't think it's a very good outlook. They'll put together a roster. They'll have a roster for this year, but I don't expect them to go out and grab any studs out of the transfer portal. Just again, based on the budget and based on the way things have gone so far. And recent history with how they've addressed the transfer portal.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. Like you said, this is going to be a Kmart roster with, what's like the top end, like Whole Foods,
Family Dollar. Maybe we should say Family Dollar instead of Kmart.
Yeah, it's like Family Dollar roster, but then you want your head coach to be like a Whole Foods, level of coaching, and that's just going to put the Band-Aid on the situation and hope that you can at least compete to get into the ACC tournament and be a 500 team next season.
Right, exactly. So again, the latest transfer portal entrant is Jalen Haralson. Again, it is expected based on what Tom Noy reported within the last couple of weeks, and we expect more to come. This is now 4 guys to the portal, and so far the only guy to announce he's staying is Brady Kohler. So not looking great. We will see how it shapes up, though, for Notre Dame men's basketball. Let's talk some football. What do you say? We heard several comments from Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman on yesterday's show. It was a lot about players is kind of the route that we went yesterday. He addressed a lot of different players, and if you missed yesterday's show, of course, you can go to either the Irish Breakdown or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel or any of the podcast platforms as well, the audio podcast platforms, and listen to some of that, a lot of in-depth stuff from Marcus Freeman on yesterday's show. Today, we're going to hear some more of his spring thoughts on a few other topics, starting with the Scuffles. Were you watching the press conference yesterday when he talked about the Scuffles?
I was. I'm pretty sure I listened to like 95% of the press conference.
Okay. All right. That's a pretty good chunk then. Well, he mentioned at the start of the press conference that there have been a few scuffles during spring practice, and he was asked if he has go-to guys to kind of mix things up when maybe they need a little bit of juice out there during practice this spring.
There's plenty of go-to guys, but I don't really have to do that. These dudes are competitive, and I don't want them to lose that competitive spirit. If we don't have scuffles or tussles, I don't know if I'm going to define it as a fight. Yeah, then we're probably not as competitive as I aspire to have our team to be. But we do have a simple rule, right? 2 guys fighting is the max, and we're not going to have full team melees. Right? So if 2 guys are fighting, they're fighting, and everybody else's job is to break them up. And we have to be proactive about that in terms of showing them and teaching them. And our guys do an unbelievable job at pulling guys apart. So then you're not wasting time. We got so much work. I tell them we got so much work to do. We can't waste 2 minutes breaking up a fight. And what are we doing? Everybody else break them up, put the ball down, and go. And so there are some consequences if we do waste too much time. All right, I'm going to get some time back somehow, some way. But again, you want that. Man, now here's the other side of things, right? And I don't know how many of you guys have brothers, but I say this all the time. Me and my brother, we would fight. It's just like brothers. You fight. But there's a line you don't cross, right? When you're fighting your brother, if you love him, some people might think I'm crazy, but like you just don't cross a certain line where, everybody's line might be a little bit different. And that's ours. Like, if 2 guys are fighting, don't cross the line and don't take it off the field. Like, it can't be personal. It's just, okay, you went too hard. I thought you went too hard. I'm mad. I threw a punch or whatever. Let's break it up and let's go. But non-negotiable is to carry that thing off the field, right? And if I hear about that, then we have a bigger issue, and our captains and our leaders got to make sure we stop it, or I ultimately do.
I'm going to be honest. When he went into the brother thing, I was kind of waiting for a Step Brothers reference, like Jerry McNamara up in the in his Syracuse press conference the other day. 2 guys max, no team melees out there. What do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, I think that Marcus Freeman hit it right on the head. You want a certain competitive edge at practice. It's not like like group fighting or anything like that. It's like, maybe you go through a rep and a guy gets up and you're jawing each other's face, or maybe one guy gets up and shoves them and another guy shoves back. That's essentially what he's talking about. Just 15, 30-second kind of, scuffle that comes from a lot of competitive spirit. You see it mainly between wide receivers and cornerbacks because they talk the most trash, and obviously they're lined up across each other predominantly every play. But I thought most importantly what he said was, I'm going to find a way to get my time back. And I remember that was something our coach used to say all the time. If we did something stupid that caused us to get off track or lose that time, practice time, because you're only allotted a certain amount of practice time, you were going to get that time back. And usually that was not fun time. And it was time after practice, again, doing something you necessarily wouldn't like.
Is that like sprints, up downs, gassers, grassers?
Even worse than that. We would do this thing where you would just get rolled. You had to roll 100 yards and back, or maybe you had to bear crawl 100 yards and back. And so
Wow.
The rolling would suck because you would just get up and obviously be very, very dizzy and nauseous.
Now, is that any fight, or is that like if things just escalated to?
That's when things would like escalate. Sometimes players would be, kicked out of practice if things went on further than it was supposed to. But I like the thing he said too about the off the field. The competitive stuff is going to happen at practice. It's like fighting your brother, but then outside of practice, you are still that one kind of big family. And I think that's the thing that he was trying to emphasize.
Yeah, you can get wound up a little bit because there is a lot of, there are competitive guys with a lot of testosterone flowing around out there on the field. You kind of expect it. You typically kind of hear about it more like during training camp and stuff like that, especially like you see it in the, just because it's so hot out there. Like temperatures are 90 to 110 and whatever level of humidity, depending on where you're practicing and stuff like that. The tempers just kind of come out when it's hot and you've been grinding and going at it. I do find it interesting that it's going on in the spring, but at the same time, I think that some people have kind of blown this a little out of proportion. It's not like, I don't really feel like there's probably any more than usual, but you're 6 practices in, and Marcus Freeman just happened to mention having some scuffles out there. So, I mean, I don't think that this is like a major issue, but if he's going to mention it, of course, questions are going to be asked about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just a reflection of how much talent is on the roster. These guys are just pushing each other, and all of the reps, and especially in the spring, it's kind of your time to get out and showcase yourself. And so I'm not surprised because there's just so much talent and everyone wants to be the best and they're pushing each other to be the best.
Adam in the YouTube chat says, isn't the first rule of Fight Club never to talk about Fight Club? I mean, yeah. Well, what about CJ Carr? Freeman was asked if the quarterback has redirected any guys after some of those scuffles.
Yeah, there's times where CJ has been the one, Don, some of the older guys that have been the one to say, hey, enough's enough, guys. Come on. All right, we got to go. We got to practice. And they can read my body language a lot of times, right, if I'm getting to that point where I feel like we're wasting time. But, we do have a rule that don't touch the red jersey. And CJ Carr, the quarterbacks are in red jerseys. Now, they shouldn't be trying to touch the other players either. But I don't ever want to see our quarterback in a scuffle, right? And it hasn't happened. Let's make sure it doesn't happen. Now, CJ can probably get some fights started, especially with his mouth, but he's going to stay out of them for sure.
Man, I mean, you want to get in trouble fast. Touch the guy in the red jersey. That's kind of the way that rolls.
Yeah, I think that this is actually really funny because it sounds like CJ Carr is, a pretty decent trash talker and can also insert himself into these scuffles, but that's like fully taking advantage of the red jersey. You get to be all bark, but nothing's ever going to happen to you at the end of the day because if something happens to the quarterback, then the whole team is going to be in trouble.
Yeah, but again, it's also the fact that CJ Carr is, kind of like, all right, guys, and enough. Let's get back to it. And I can imagine just kind of the, like the eye roll and the disgusted look on Marcus Freeman's face when some of this kind of stuff maybe is happening a little bit more frequently than what it needs to. And it's like, okay, the players, as he said, not just CJ Carr, but other leaders. He mentioned the Don Schuler there as well. I think it's good that the players are just policing themselves and keeping things moving the way they're supposed to be moving. But again, it's a physical sport, and you've got guys, literally butting heads and mixing it up on any given play, and guys are competing for jobs and trying to prove who's the best out there. You just expect some of this kind of stuff to happen. And wouldn't you be more surprised and or even maybe disappointed if you didn't see some of this kind of stuff happening?
Yeah, I would be surprised and disappointed as well. I think, though, what you have to realize is when you're doing these sort of practices, it's the same guys lining up across from each other every single day. There's no other circumstance when you're playing football.
Right.
That's the scenario. You play against a team, and it's just that person for the entire game. But imagine doing that every day at practice multiple times a week in a situation where, again, there is a lot of testosterone in the air. You are trying to earn roster spots. You're trying to beat out certain people. And so, when the guy in front of you is maybe being annoying that day or limiting your ability to do what you want to do to showcase yourself, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to start jabbing a little bit back and forth. And then it just takes kind of one last thing for the entire, situation to blow up. And that could be an accumulation of 2 straight practices, 3 straight practices. But it's just like, man, I'm sick of this dude. All week he's just been in my ear. And then finally something happens.
Yeah, that's right. Something happens, and not good, I guess. Not good. But this team came out of 2025 with a chip on its shoulder, and Marcus Freeman has talked about leave no doubt and all that different kind of stuff. He was asked, does this team need to have an edge in spring? Here's his answer.
Absolutely. I think you need one every day, because if not, you'll get complacent, you'll get comfortable, and you won't improve. And so it's my job to find ways to create that edge, to create that motivation. And listen, if you were in every team meeting, the general theme would all be the same, right? How do you choose hard? So because you have to struggle, right? And how do you continue to sacrifice for someone or something other than yourself? And ultimately for us in the football program, it's Notre Dame. And that's got to be the edge, the challenge every day. We have to struggle. Like nothing great is achieved without hard, tough struggles, right? Mentally or physically. But you have to sacrifice. Right? Nothing great is achieved on your own. You have to be willing to sacrifice for someone or something other than yourself. And so that's an everyday reminder, right? And there might be a time I need to say, keep the pain, to get them to remember why we have to struggle, to get them to understand and remember why we have to sacrifice. And that's a feel that I got to have for our team, but we have to have an edge, right? And nothing great is achieved if you don't have that edge and that motivation to struggle and sacrifice.
And I mean, I honestly kind of think that it can be tough, especially in the spring, because you're not yet gearing up for the season. Like once you get to fall camp and you're coming out of all your summer training, like you're ramping up to something. This is kind of that middle ground that you've got here in March and April. So I think the ability for, whether it's for Freeman to put the chip on their shoulder or for the guys just to have it, just to be a little bit chippy because maybe they're still ticked off. And again, you've got guys competing for jobs and stuff like that. I think that to have that at this time of year is a good sign as well.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous sign. I think the hardest part for a football coach during the springtime is to keep players motivated and incentivized with just kind of coming out and practicing against each other every day. Because, obviously, like you were kind of mentioning during the regular season, there is something to work towards. It's getting better for the opponent and then winning that game or the task at hand. And then, obviously when the postseason comes, it's kind of win and keep going on. So in the spring, it's really crucial to create kind of like milestones or achievements that players can kind of obtain. That way it feels like they're kind of working towards something and breaking up the monotony or the mundaneness of, spring practice. Because I know it might be a little bit cliche, but it's like no one loves going to spring practice. And especially, I know Notre Dame has like indoor facilities and stuff like that, but like, man, I remember some Michigan practices at 6 a.m. and it's 10 degrees out and there's snow flurries blowing. You're like, the last thing I want to do right now is a tackling drill at 6:15 in the morning. So you just have to find ways to keep people motivated throughout these spring practices, because obviously, they'd rather go tee off against someone else and play a competitive game where there's an actual obtainable result.
Yeah. You're not gearing up for an opponent. You're not getting ready for an opponent. You're just beating up against your buddy most of the time, or at least your teammate for the entirety of spring. That's what it comes down to. Okay, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, we've got more comments from Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman, some of his spring comments from his press conference yesterday. We'll do that when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. Sean Stiers, along with Jesse Stiers, on this very springy Thursday. Glad to have you with us today. We've got some comments from Marcus Freeman on today's show. C3PO in the YouTube chat says, it's a good sign that they're not just going through the motions. They're taking it seriously this spring. You know, like talking about how things are kind of high level of energy this spring. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's so hard during the spring not to get caught up in the motions, and I think that's kind of the mark of a good team is realizing the time that you have to get better as a team. And I think that this roster is kind of the perfect combination of a lot of young competitive talent, a lot of transfer portal talent that's coming in and kind of establishing themselves, getting used to the culture. And then you have, some of the older guys who've been around a few years that are helping pass down or carry on that tradition of culture and what's been established. So, everyone's kind of proving themselves, I guess, at the end of the day. You have your old guys who are, trying to keep the culture going from, their national championship appearance, the transfers who are coming in and proving themselves. And of course, the young guys who are like, just chomping at the bit to do anything.
Sloppy Joe says, I've never seen Marcus Freeman look and sound more relaxed. I mean, I think that the combination of what you were just talking about there, Jess, like he's got so much returning talent and all this young talent. They've added the key transfer portal pieces. All those things, and all this returning experience, including the quarterback, and the fact that it's spring, I think that probably helps keep him relaxed. I think he probably likes what he's seeing out there in the spring quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's definitely true. And you would have more experience because you actually go to the press conferences and see more of his body language and the way he responds, in person. But I would say I tend to agree with this. And I think that it's just kind of a accumulation of the work that he's put in where there's just a certain level of confidence, like as a coach, I feel like once you've done this a few times, because this is now his fourth spring, you can start comparing, kind of how you felt in other springs, and I think ultimately right now, Notre Dame has more answers than ever. And and the questions that they have, there's no like major question.
Right.
And
there's
in the
not
past,
a quarterback competition with three guys splitting reps and trying to figure out who the guy is going to be.
Yeah, and then there's, is Riley Leonard going to be healthy? Who's going to win the competition between the quarterbacks?
Mm-hmm.
There's been, what's this offense going to look like with Jared Parker? There was the Tyler Buckner, Drew Pine experience where what were we going to get out of that? There was Mike Denbrock's first year. There was Al Golden's first year. Then there was Chris Ash's first year. This year, there's just so many. There's like really no big questions hanging over this team right now. It's just a matter of can they just put in the work and all the talent kind of come together. And like, I've said this in the past and maybe jokingly, but like I genuinely mean it when we're up here worried about who's going to be the QB2. And that's kind of like the largest looming question right now. I think that's why you see Marcus Freeman so relaxed. There's just so many answers right now. I think the biggest question would be, what's the depth going to look like at the running back room? If you had to come out of this with like, I think what might be a burning question right now today. And it's like, even that's not even really a burning question.
No, because, we talked a lot about wide receivers yesterday, and it just like based on the highlights that we've seen, based on what we've been able to see and what little we've been out there so far, there's just so much talent in that wide receiver room that like, that's the least of their problems. Like whoever ends up being at the top of the depth chart is going to be really good this fall, like at the wide receiver room.
Speaking of, did you see the highlight that they posted of CJ Carr throwing his favorite route over the shoulder to Mylan Graham?
I did see that. You talking about that from yesterday?
Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah.
It's just like, how do you not get fired up? That's the best pass that he throws. And you see a 5-star just hauling that. Like that ball is, I don't know what you could do to stop that in a game. Like that's a play that you could just keep throwing. And it's like the other team might just have to sit there and and take it, because it's like, what kind of response do you have? Like that's just good on good. That's good wide receiver, good ball, good quarterback. I wanted to also, I've been throwing some random questions at you today.
Okay.
You mentioned the spring weather. It's actually really nice out here today too, after just being outrageously cold and rainy and all that stuff. Easter's on Sunday. Are you a Peeps guy?
Not a Peeps guy. They don't taste good at all. Like if it was a chocolate covered Peeps, I could go with it. But like
I think it's one of the most overrated candies.
Yeah, not good.
Especially related to like the holidays, because it's a holiday candy.
It's just a ball of sugary mush is all it is.
It's just like crystallized sugar.
Yes.
That's all I taste. It's like crunchy sugar.
It's bad. You know my favorites. I like the Whopper eggs with the hard shell on the outside. That's my favorite Easter candy.
Are you guys doing anything like cookout wise for Easter?
Grilling steaks.
Ooh.
There was a rumor that you might be floating into town this weekend.
You know, mom's had surgery. I don't know if she's thinking in a straight, mind.
Yeah, well, she's not the one doing the cooking. Adam asks, isn't kicker still a question mark? I don't think so. They got
one of the best kickers in the portal.
Yeah, they got the transfer from Purdue, Spencer Porath. I don't think that's a question at all. Maybe punter is a little bit of a question, but like kicker is not a question mark. Spencer Porath is going to be the guy. Like you had as you said, like you're getting a really good kicker from a very bad team, and now he's going to be your guy. So I don't think there's anything to worry about there. I wanted to, on the stuff that you were talking about there with like the continuity of the coaching staff. Now, you've got both of your coordinators back for the first time in a while because you brought in Denbrock a couple of years ago.
Like your head honchos.
Right. Last year you brought in Chris Ash. And so now both of those guys, and like prior to bringing in Mike Denbrock, they had a couple, he was the third offensive coordinator under Marcus Freeman. So now you've got the coordinator continuity, but of course the defensive side of the ball, you had to replace all the position coaches. So the question was posed to Marcus Freeman, which is tougher to deal with, replacing the coordinators or replacing the position coaches underneath him? And here's how Freeman responded to that.
I've said this before, but if you would have asked me before this year, I would have definitely thought changing one person, even though it's your coordinator, would not be as difficult as changing 3 position coaches like we did this year. But I've learned when you have a veteran returning in those key leadership positions, right? You have both coordinators back. You have experience at your quarterback. It truly helps the players, right? Because they're not learning a new way. I'm not saying we're not enhancing, but they're not learning a new concept of teaching, right? Here's what we want, right? Here's the vision. How do we go out there and practice and really do it? It's more pressure on the coordinator to teach the position coach what he wants. But the players know. A lot of times the players are helping the position coach. And so it definitely is more of an adjustment when you change one person at a leadership position. And that could be coordinator, that could be quarterback, that can be a number of different leadership positions. But for me, even as the head coach, I know what we're doing on offense, defense, and special teams. I understand the concepts. If we make changes, we'll talk about it. But it's definitely more of adjustment when you change a coordinator.
I think that makes sense because the standard starts at the top and then trickles down. And then, like you said, whatever the coordinator's philosophy is, like the system might generally be the same, but there's still going to be some changes coming from the top, because again, like going back to the whole Ash conversation last year about, well, I'm running the Notre Dame offense. Well, there were obviously Ash philosophies, that were different than what the philosophies of Al Golden had before him. And that took a little bit more adjustment time than we thought. So like, you don't expect those things to be there now. Now it's It's just the position coaches have to, to figure out what the coordinator wants and implement them. So it makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense to me because, like he was saying, you have the opportunity, once you have kind of your head coordinators in place, you have more people to kind of teach the overall philosophy at the end of the day because they're just an extension of you. Like the defensive coordinator has the knowledge of what he wants his linebackers to do, his defensive linemen to do, how he wants his secondary to play. And if those position coaches don't know that, then he has to spend the time to, or I guess either side of the ball to teach those specific position coaches. But I think also the point being made about how, this roster has so much veteran leadership and experience that it's the players also helping out at the same time. And I think that's super crucial for a team that one aspires to have depth, but then also, be as complex and elite as Notre Dame is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. Marcus Freeman also talked about the fact that, there's a lot of good on good going on this spring. So what has he seen from that? A good on good being like ones versus ones type action. So what's he seen there?
It's competitive. It is. We practice more team and football and competitive situations than we ever have before because our foundation was a lot higher. And it's been really good because you can evaluate, you can coach ball, right? You can coach them actually playing the game of football. And individual drills are important. Group work's important, but nothing's going to help you become a better player more than actually playing the game. And we've been able to do that. In order to do that, you got to be smart. You got to take care of each other. And those are there's been opportunities for me to continue to teach and show them examples of how to practice smart. We can't go good on good if we don't practice smart, right? And there's different situations where I can show them this wasn't a great decision. Do you understand? And if they don't, then that's a deeper conversation we have to have. But as long as they continue to practice smart, we're going to continue to do 11 on 11 and good on good situations.
So, are we guessing, like the decisions that he's talking about, maybe like a hit that's probably not needed in spring, especially when you've got a somewhat depleted roster because some of the injuries and guys who are out right now?
Sorry, what was that in reference to? I missed that part. I think just talk like, are you saying just having a good player be out type situation?
I'll play the cut for you again. And he talks about he basically talked about guys making good decisions, like when you're practicing good on good.
Yeah, it's competitive. It is. We practice more team and football and competitive situations than we ever have before because our foundation was a lot higher. And it's been really good because you can evaluate, you can coach ball, right? You can coach them actually playing the game of football. And individual drills are important. Group work's important, but nothing's going to help you become a better player more than actually playing the game. And we've been able to do that. In order to do that, you got to be smart. You got to take care of each other. And those are there's been opportunities for me to continue to teach and show them examples of how to practice smart. We can't go good on good if we don't practice smart, right? And there's different situations where I can show them this wasn't a great decision. Do you understand? And if they don't, then that's a deeper conversation we have to have. But as long as they continue to practice smart, we're going to continue to do 11 on 11 and good on good situations.
Practicing smart, making good decisions.
Yeah, so I missed that part at the end. I think what that means is just not taking a shot on your teammate unnecessarily. Right. And like wide receiver over the middle, you're a safety. Don't take off your teammate's
You're not going to
head.
lay him out. Yeah.
That sort of situation. I guess I was more hyper fixated kind of towards the beginning and middle of the response there. And I was kind of infatuated with the idea of they're basically running less individual and maybe 7-on-7 or – because usually how it's broken down is you can do your pre-practice stuff and then you go, individual drills, which is by position group. And then usually you see, like linebackers and defensive linemen go and work a period together of like inside run that box basically. Then you'll see the linebackers go with the secondary and they'll run some 7-on-7. But then maybe there's, a one-on-one period between offensive line and defensive line. And so it seems like there's less of that and more team stuff because, again, there's just so much talent on the roster. They don't have to spend as much time teaching fundamentals and specific skills
and
in those individual
coordinators
periods.
back. So there's less of that kind of stuff to have to learn all over again.
Right. And so they're just further along and they have more talented players that they have to spend less amount of time on coaching up essentially. And Marcus Freeman said there's nothing better than going full, team on team, good on good periods, because it's just going to help everyone. One, you can see yourself on film. And when it all comes together, it's like, that's the hardest part is like, because like I was saying, sometimes when you do the inside run, it's like, well, I know run is coming. And then when you do the 7-on-7, it's like, well, I know pass is coming. But when you put it all together, it's like, okay, now you actually have to put the whole game together. And that's going to help you just with game speed, recognizing things, speed, and again, kind of putting that whole package together.
One of the position groups that I think that there is, like you were talking about question marks before, tight end, I think fits that bill. There's a question mark there. And, some of that has to do more with, past health, some injuries, like Flanagan and where they are. And, just like who's in the room right now. Eli Raridan is gone. And so Freeman talked about if he has seen one tight end starting to elevate over the rest, or if you can kind of go with more a committee/group approach. And here's what he said.
We'll see if somebody truly separates himself, then we'll say, hey, he's the starter. Right now, it's a great competition. It's complimentary. It'd be, so great to have Cooper back, right? But Cooper makes James better, which makes Ty Washington better, which makes Jack Larson better, and even Preston. And they've all done some really, really good things. And they all got areas they have to improve. But you miss Coop. You missed what he brings, the toughness, the tenacity that he brings to a practice. You miss that. And sometimes you don't notice until you have him back, right? But he's back to old Coop, and he's pretty special.
Back to old Cooper Flanagan. So it sounds like maybe, starting to elevate there. It feels like even though Eli Raridan, from a receptions and yardage standpoint, ended up factoring into the offense, maybe like more when you look at the stat sheet, more than you would have even thought, even though he never caught a touchdown pass last season. Doesn't it feel like there's sort of less emphasis the last couple of seasons under Denbrock on the tight end in general?
I do think so, but I think that's naturally just kind of happened with, Riley Leonard being a really good running quarterback, the running game, obviously with Riley Leonard and CJ Carr last season. I think tight ends are going to have a pivotal role on this offense this season, within the offense this season, because I think they're going to be able to exploit a lot of like man-on-man matchups because the defense is going to have to allocate resources elsewhere. I think teams are going to be more nervous about Notre Dame's kind of, wide receivers, perimeter wide receivers, and running back game, that those tight ends can really, maximize some of these matchups in these games. And I have two bold takes about the tight end room. I don't know if they're bold. I wouldn't be surprised if Ty Washington has an elevated role compared to maybe last year, and gets a snap usage or percentage that is larger than anticipated. I know both Flanagans are good, but I mean, at the end of the day, Ty Washington has the most experience out of both of these guys. He played in the SEC. He played last year on Notre Dame. I forgot he had a year left, so that's even better, when he transferred.
Mm-hmm.
But also, this tight end room is going to be a tight end by committee, and I think you're going to see – or not committee, it's just going to be guys are going to be rotating in and out. I think they're going to go, a lot of 2 tight end personnel sets. You got to be able to block, obviously. There's going to be more tight end sets that are related to, okay, we need someone to catch a pass here and get vertical and like I said, exploit a matchup. But I think that the tight end room isn't going to be necessarily about what one guy can do. I think they're going to be better kind of utilizing what all three of them can do as a group.
That's how it feels like to me as well. Like we're gonna and I think the most underrated aspect of being a tight end still, or playing tight end, is it's just the blocking aspect of it. What you can do as a blocker. Everyone wants to talk about big receptions and all that kind of stuff, but tight ends still have to block, and I think that's going to be a part of it. And I think that the kind of guys that they have can do a little bit of both. One final comment this hour from Marcus Freeman before we wrap up hour number one. Is he seeing what he needs to see from defensive ends Keon Keeley, who of course transferred from Alabama, and Bryce Young, and what impact has the new defensive line coach Charlie Partridge had on those guys?
There's a whole list of guys that have done a really good job affecting the passer. And it's not just the end position, right? It's not just Bryce and Keon. Ronnie's doing a really good job. But even on the inside, like understanding rush lanes, understanding how to play off each other is so important. When you see some of the negative plays against any defense, but our defense last year when a quarterback scramble, it's just understanding rush lanes and how to work with each other and balance the rush. And so they've really done a good job getting internal pressure on the quarterback and doing a good job on the edges. Again, I couldn't speak more highly of Coach Partridge and his reputation precedes him, right? Like, I've heard great things, but to have him in our program, what he brings as a teacher, what he brings as a person, and what he brings as a recruiter, I've been extremely pleased and pleased with the room, right? The room, the connection that room has, but the elevation, they're playing really well.
Anything stand out to you there from what you heard him talking about?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that he talked about was just how, they got to come together as a room. And that's kind of how I've always viewed kind of the Notre Dame defensive line over the last, especially, under Golden and now Chris Ash and probably when Marcus Freeman was there. I feel like there used to be this big emphasis on like you needed a guy, right? And he'd be out there like the whole game. It's just not the approach anymore. And I don't think I've seen a defensive line more deep and talented than this group right here. Like there might have been more top end talent, but like the overall balance of the room, and having someone like Charlie Partridge there with all of the experience that he has is something that we as fans should be really excited about.
Yeah, I don't feel like we're probably going to see. We've talked a lot about Boubacar Traore and maybe what we expect from him from a sack standpoint, but I feel like you're right. Like with just the numbers of guys, I mean, I think in today's game, you would rather have 2 or 3 guys who are all fairly even, and you can just keep running bodies out there and guys with high motors who are able to get after it. And I'm excited to see what Charlie Partridge can do with this unit, because I feel like this could end up being the best defensive line across the board that Freeman's had since he's been head coach at Notre Dame.
Yeah, and just having that experience from Partridge, who's coached at the college level at a high level, obviously can combine that NFL experience, knowledge, scheme with the amount of depth and talent at Notre Dame is going to be something special.
That's it for hour number one. Oh, I did actually want to these came in. C3PO says you love candy corn. Candy corn, I think, actually underrated. I know candy corn gets a bad rap. That's more like a Halloween candy for me, but hey, underrated Halloween candy corn.
Yeah, I like candy corn at Halloween, but I'll have a caveat. I like when it has the peanuts in it. I don't like just straight up candy cane very often, but I like when the peanuts are in that and you get a little bit of extra crunch and saltiness.
Oh yeah, that's like the it's like a bag of peanuts and a bag of candy corns mixed together. It's kind of like the Payday candy bar. That's what
exactly.
It's like the Payday candy bar. Try it sometime. If you like a Payday candy bar, mix a bag of candy corns and a bag of nice salted roasted peanuts together, and it's like a Payday is what it is. Joe likes the Starburst jelly beans. Those are pretty good as well.
See, my issue is with the jelly beans. There's like half that I enjoy and half that I'm like, ugh, I don't want these flavors at all.
That's true too. Yep.
So I feel bad because I'm often like picking the ones out, and then there's like just a pile of like white, green, yellow jelly beans.
There are a lot of anti-candy corn people out there, and Joe Allen is apparently one of them. He says he can't trust us anymore. We got one more comment from Marcus Freeman coming up in hour number 2. IU is sending its national championship trophy on a tour, and it is in town in South Bend today. We'll hear what Marcus Freeman has to say about that. We've got some basketball stuff, more football, tons of stuff coming up because it's a little thing called Rapid Fire. Coming up in hour number 2, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Yes, indeed. It's hour number 2 of the show, and that can mean only one thing. It's rapid fire time. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. Are you ready for it?
I've been actually looking forward to this one all day.
I think you always say that. Is there really something on here that like you're really anxious to get into?
Yeah, all of it.
All right. Well, good. We've got a good list together then for rapid fire today. All of it is a good answer. Starting with the Indiana Hoosiers National Championship Trophy is traveling around the state, and it is in South Bend. It is at IUSB, Indiana University South Bend, today. It is actually there until 7 o'clock tonight. And so Marcus Freeman, at his press conference yesterday, was asked about it. Was that on his radar?
I'm very intentional about not being on social media, and I wouldn't even have known that till you said that right there, but you remind me why I don't get on social media. All right, I don't need that. It doesn't matter, for us, Mike, it doesn't matter, right? And now, you did challenge me a little bit to how can I use it as motivation. Maybe I'll go back to my office and think about this, and I'm always looking for ways to motivate the guys. But us looking at a national championship, us thinking about a national championship isn't helping us get better in the moment. And we all know why we come to Notre Dame. Like if you don't have aspirations to win a national championship or move on to the highest level in the NFL, then you're probably at the wrong place. You are. You're not probably. You're at the wrong place. But we don't need to focus on that. We need to focus on what we have. Right? And what we have now is they got class, but tomorrow we got meet, lift, flip. We're going to have to make sure we focus and choose to struggle in the weight room, choose to struggle in meetings, challenge each other, and then we'll have a little bit of an Easter break. But we can't really worry about the destination or an outcome. We got to focus on what we have.
So a lot of different things there for Marcus Freeman on this. First and foremost, I did not realize when this question was asked that it was IU's actual national championship trophy that they just got for winning the title a couple of months ago. I thought it was one of these like next year's trophy is on tour and they're sending it around. This is actually IU's championship trophy that they won. And obviously part of the reason that is here in South Bend is because they do have an IU branch here in South Bend. So what did you think of Freeman's response to that?
So I gotta make a declaration here first.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and I don't mean these things in an offensive way. There were a couple.
No offense, but
so something offensive's coming out.
Something good coming?
Yeah. There were a couple of just bad questions asked to Marcus Freeman, and this falls in that bucket. Why are you asking a man about a national championship trophy to your in-state rival that won a national championship before you that turned it around faster than you? Like, he doesn't care about that. That is not on his radar in the slightest. And there's nothing motivational that can come out of it. He's just trying to make whoever asked that question feel nice and good about themselves. It's spring. Ha. I'll laugh off this question.
Uh-huh.
Ask that question to Saban back in his heyday. I would have liked to hear that response.
Marcus Freeman's going to give you the nice, politically correct response is what he's going to do. Yeah, you're right. Nick Saban, I guess Belichick will never sniff a national championship at the college level, but, like Belichick would have given you a similar answer, obviously, those kind of guys.
It's not a good question. In the middle of spring, there's so many other things to focus on about Notre Dame, and that's, again, I'm not trying to be mean, but like that's the best thing that we could come up with. You haven't talked to Marcus Freeman in how long?
And we're talking about national championship trophies of another team.
Going on a tour.
State. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I can't disagree. I did like Marcus Freeman starting off with the social media response. Like other than Lane Kiffin, how many sane college football head coaches do you think actually are on social media and engaging in social media? I've got to think it's a pretty small list, don't you?
Very small list. They have a social media manager. Someone else has the account login and they're posting on behalf of Marcus Freeman. But Marcus Freeman himself isn't be running to us with, ooh, let me update Instagram or X or TikTok or whatever it might be. Now he's got far more important things to be worrying about.
Yeah. And yeah. Steve asks, how are the kicking game and special teams looking so far? Really haven't got to see a whole lot. We got to see a little bit at the 4 period.
See, that would have been a nice question that person could have asked instead of this little trophy question.
Right. Something that actually had to do with Notre Dame.
And the woes that they faced last season. Yeah. Hey, how is the kicking coming along? You know, do you guys feel more confident about that room? What have you seen that's been positive?
Yeah, we got to see a little bit of return stuff, a little bit of coverage, you know, like starter type stuff. That's really it. We haven't seen much special teams this spring. Johnny, we were talking about candy corn last hour. He says, all the candy corn ever created was produced in 1916. What is being bought today is just recycled from various dumpsters. Wow. Man, the hate for candy corn is astounding. Candy corn. I still consider it very underrated. Fill in the blank. Point guard Hannah Hidalgo winning the Naismith National Defensive Player of the Year award is blank.
It's legendary. I believe she's the second only guard all time to win the award. And I mean, let's just be honest. That should speak enough in itself, because you just don't see guards win Defensive Player of the Year. It is quite literally almost the best big in the league or in the country.
Usually the shot blockers.
Yep.
Win this thing.
Shot blockers, rebounders, just the log in the middle of the lane usually for who's going to win this award. So it's deserved, but it is legendary, and it just adds to, you know, Hannah Hidalgo's impressive yet not finished resume within the college basketball world.
Man, and I think it's amazing when you watch, you know, like they put together some highlight stuff of her, you know, after she won the award, and just like the things that you see her do, the way she's just like popping and hopping, and she's practically, you know, like on top of a player, taking the ball, you know, from somebody who's like 5 inches taller than her, yank it away from them. And, you know, like when you heard Gino Auriemma talk about how, you know, like the way that, you know, the way she impacts that side of the floor is like nobody else. The fact that, you know, like you have to go to the lengths to make sure, you know, a couple of different things, you know, one, that you're not starting the offense as UConn, a team like UConn, you don't start the offense, you know, with whoever Hannah Hidalgo is guarding. And, you know, like I think you heard one of the announcers say in that little highlight montage that they put together, like, you don't have the player who Hannah Hidalgo is guarding come out and set the screen. You're just asking for trouble, you know, by doing that. But it's also, Jesse, like when you sit back and look at this and all the conversation that we had that Hannah Hidalgo was not a finalist for National Player of the Year. If you're worthy of being the Defensive Player of the Year and all the impact that you have on that end of the floor, and you're the third leading scorer in the entire nation, like how does that get left out of the National Player of the Year conversation? Like somebody needs to answer that. It's just, it's astounding that happened.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think this goes back to kind of a controversial, you know, what you value in a basketball player more. What defines your player of the year or ultimately maybe your GOAT when you're talking about basketball? Do you value someone who's a pure scorer who is just going to, you know, maybe give you 4, 5, 10 points a night more compared to the next person? Or are you looking for the complete basketball player who gives you, you know, elite defense every night, is an above average rebounder, is a top scorer in the country, also gets her teammates involved with the assists? I think, and this kind of, you know, will lean towards my opinion on things. I like the more well-rounded basketball player, even if it means you're just not the best pure scorer in the game. And you know, oftentimes we talk about the NFL MVP award being the best quarterback on the best team. That's often what these Player of the Year awards feel like is the best scorer on one of the best teams. And, you know, Vince and I talked about this as well. I don't understand why you can have two Connecticut players that are only going to disservice each other. They're going to take votes away from one another, but you can't have someone like Hannah Hidalgo on there that is the best defensive player, set the single season steal record, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have two players that, again, both of them aren't going to win it, and they're only going to take votes away from the other one.
Each other. Yeah.
And so I thought it was very poor this season of determining at least who the finalists are and ultimately some of the best players in the country.
And it's also crazy to think, I really want to see if she finally gets some legitimate national conversation going next year, because who is the talk
I think
of?
You kind of have to.
Who is the talk of the entire NCAA tournament? Like, what individual player? Is there anyone other than her that was getting the conversation that she was getting during the tournament across the entire country?
Because every time the announcers were on, it was like, well, Hannah's willing this team. Without Hannah, this team, she's playing every minute. She's racking up almost a quadruple double, and had the triple double with steals. We never seen this before, because you see double doubles and the occasional triple double, but you don't see it with the steals, and so.
You don't see very many triple doubles in the Elite Eight. Well, I guess it was in the Sweet 16. Even then, you don't see many triple doubles when you're talking about going up against that level of competition. It's like I said this to Neil Ivey. It's one thing when you're getting a triple double in November or December against your non-conference competition, like because you tend to play lower level non-conference competition. It's one thing to do it then. It's another thing to do it in the Sweet 16 against a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament and nearly have a quadruple double on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, it's just really frustrating that we're not taking in the full body of work of, what this player can do on both sides of the ball. And I want to slip this in here too before I forget. I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Kevin Durant, and for some reason, Muggsy Bogues came up. That's all I could think of when I think of Hannah Hidalgo. Just, he was 5'4", and what made me think of that is he was talking about how Muggsy just was able to position himself unlike anyone else because of his size, the way he was able to slip the gaps and pick balls off and get steals and make passes and alleys and crevices that aren't usually there. That's what I think of Hannah Hidalgo, someone who's just constantly going the whole game and using what most would consider a disadvantage to their advantage. That's the biggest thing about Hannah. Everyone sees her as this small point guard, but she turns around and leads the country in steals because of her size.
She's the only player this century to average 25 points, over 5 rebounds, over 5 assists, and over 5 steals in a season. Only player this century. Think about that. And she's got to have more National Player of the Year conversation next year. She should have had more this year, but again, I think that where the team was, it was too much of a team award this year. The players who ended up getting nominated. So very well deserved for the Defensive Player of the Year. I think we can all pretty much, everyone can agree with that. But she needs to be considered one of the front runners for National Player of the Year, period, next year. But Sarah Strong's going to be around still. So in my mind, it's probably between those two players. But from the beginning of the season, a lot of people just stamped Sarah Strong with that award, and it just seems like it is stuck. It's obviously carried her, into this end of the season. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame men's basketball freshman guard Jalen Haralson entering the transfer portal is blank.
It's unfortunate, but it's expected. And it's the sad reality of where Notre Dame men's basketball is at this point. You mentioned it earlier. It sounds like a basement in the NIL men's college basketball world is $10 million, and Notre Dame's barely doing a third of that. And so I don't understand how, as a university and a program, especially it's not like you're shoot, Butler, Creighton, of the worlds, you're Notre Dame. So it's just embarrassing with your alumni and just the overall university, like tuition, all of the money that goes around this university. You're telling me that they can't expend more than what's being expended right now just to keep up? You know what I mean? Like, not even be top spenders, but just keep up. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it is. And it is, like as John said in the chat, it is very sad. This is a guy who ended up being honorable mention all ACC as a freshman, averaging better than 16 points and 4 rebounds a game. And, definitely one of the top players on this roster. And like based on people I've talked to, and this is multiple people, it's not just one, but, again, money is a big part of this. Like, you can point the finger at Micah Shrewsbury and say they should be winning more games. And I think that is completely fair. But based on things that I've heard, this is much more about the money aspect. And the fact that, as you were alluding to there, Notre Dame's budget on its roster is in the $3 million ballpark. It may not be exactly $3 million, but like the starting point, like you were saying, for most teams who are going to be competitive, starts out at around $10 million. So they're not in the right ballpark right now. And like you're talking about guys like Haralson, Serta, and Burton, who, if you look at their NBA prospects right now, I would say that, like it's varying degrees, but I don't think any of those guys or any of the guys on the Notre Dame roster, like you would be penciling in for an NBA career at this point. Well, if you're not going to be an NBA guy, maybe you get to go play in Europe and you can make a little bit of money for a few years, or China, or wherever it happens to be. But you've got to make your money while you have the opportunity, and their opportunity is right now. And if you're an all ACC player like a Jalen Haralson, or if you're a great 3-point shooter and a pretty good player like Cole Serta, and you're an all ACC type point guard like Marcus Burton, and you don't have a certain NBA future, you've got to make your money while you can. And if you can't make it at Notre Dame, you would be foolish not to go someplace else that is going to give you, maybe $1 million a year, just as a starting point to go out and play, and maybe you're on a little bit better team as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no more that you can say than Marcus Burton, a guy who's been here for 3 seasons now?
Yeah,
I believe. Local guy, has maybe, probably a year left on his degree. Even he's packing it up, Like the local kid who's been nothing but South Bend his whole life, growing up playing in South Bend high school basketball, Notre Dame basketball. Even he's being like, man, I can't do it. I can't sit here, and especially with the injuries and probably not knowing his certainty in the NBA, like you talked about, Notre Dame can't even retain a guy like that. I don't know. To me, it makes it even more saddening.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I realize Braden Shrewsbury is a little bit of a lightning rod, but the guy, he's the coach's son, obviously, and he's going into his senior season now. And like, he's not one, that anyone expects to go anywhere, but
wouldn't that be crazy though, if even his own son?
I mean, the honesty of the situation is, for the kind of production and experience that he has, he could go out on the open market and he would make much more someplace else than what he'll get for staying here at Notre Dame. Like, that's a fact. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. Tommy wants to know, Jesse, why you blur your background for some shows but not others. What's going on that you don't want people who are watching the YouTube stream to see?
Well, if I told you, then
he wouldn't be hiding. It wouldn't be worth hiding it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more rapid fire. We've got plenty more topics. Kirk Cousins has a new home, and we've even got a little Notre Dame baseball and some other stuff coming up. Speaking of Tommy, he asked a question yesterday about Notre Dame baseball. We will address that next when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Rapid Fire continues on Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. Today, Jesse, Kirk Cousins has signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. This was breaking news today. You in or out on this move?
I'm couldn't be more in on this type of guy, to be honest with you. First and foremost, Kirk Cousins played his best ball under Clint Kubiak. That's who he's reuniting with out there in Oakland. And I remember Kirk Cousins recently talked about, the struggles of kind of being in, and I think this was Atlanta specific, being in a system where guys were kind of trying to change stuff up a little bit mechanically and kind of throwing them off a little bit landmark-wise. I think we saw a little bit out of an outlier from Kirk Cousins kind of recently. I think I'm not saying he's like this elite quarterback, but he's a solid, probably better than backup quarterback in the NFL. And so I think for that reason, it's a good fit. And then also, I think it's a great fit too, because the Raiders can now play him and not expect Mendoza to be this world saver year one,
And that's
throw
the
him
big
out
thing.
there.
Yeah.
You basically, Mendoza can learn behind Cousins. Cousins can take all the lumps of what may or may not come from this season. But again, so many times these young quarterbacks are drafted first overall. They're expected to play right away, fix all these issues. I like that the Raiders, at least on paper, seem to be okay. We're gonna get Cousins in here. Mendoza's gonna get drafted, learn here a little bit. But the parallels between this situation and the Atlanta situation is crazy. The last team that Cousins came from, because remember, Atlanta signed him out of nowhere. Then they drafted Penix, and then there was this whole debacle about, well, is it Penix? Is it Cousins? I think there'll be much more clear expectations between Mendoza and Cousins, but I like the thought process.
I mean, if you want to talk about two shiny, happy people holding hands in the room together, Kirk Cousins, assuming the Raiders do end up drafting Mendoza, which we all think that they're going to do at number one, like this is a match made in heaven. Like
they're kind of spitting images of each other.
I know who's going to be the happier person. Like who's going to have the more positive vibes every morning when they walk in the room. I can't think of a more positive vibes quarterback room than the one they're going to have in Vegas with Cousins. And Cousins is at the point in his career, like you said, it's a lot different now because they threw all that money and they signed Cousins. Would Kirk Cousins have I realize again that the Falcons threw a lot of money at him. Would he have signed that contract though if he knew that they were going to just turn around and draft Michael Penix in the first round?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
This is a lot different now. He's going into this knowing who they're probably going to take. He's got a clock on the rest of his pro career. It is ticking down now. He can go be the mentor to Fernando Mendoza. You would expect that Cousins will be the starter on day one. How long that lasts, I don't know, but he'll be the mentor for Fernando Mendoza. And it's like, this is, as dysfunctional as the Raiders organization has been, this is probably as good a situation as Fernando Mendoza could ask for walking in the door with a new head coach who's got an offensive background, like you talked about with Kubiak, and the experience with Cousins and having Cousins there to help him. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Tommy asking in the chat, it's confirmed Burton is gone. I assume he's asking that question, like, because we were talking about Burton a minute ago. I mean, is it announced? Is it, like Tom Noy reported a couple of weeks ago to expect Haralson, Burton, and Serta all to enter the transfer portal. And like I have seen other guys on the beat, Matt Freeman, I think was one of them today that was talking about that, so no, he hasn't officially gone into the portal, but it is very expected that both Burton and Serta are going to go into the transfer portal. Yes. So when you hear it, we're talking about it here. Like, it shouldn't come as a shock to you. I think we talked about it last week that it was probably going to happen based on Tom's reporting. So don't be shocked when it happens, because I think everyone is expecting that to happen, that both Burton and Serta are also going to go into the portal at some point. The portal officially opens next Tuesday, 5 days from now. Tommy yesterday in the mailbag submitted a couple questions about Notre Dame baseball, and we didn't get to them. So I wanted to get to that today. They got swept by North Carolina last weekend after sweeping Clemson the previous week. So Tommy asked, are they contenders or pretenders? What do you think, Jess?
I don't think they're pretenders quite yet, and I don't think that they're contenders quite yet. I think they're still kind of more hovering in the middle, but if I had to boldly declare, I would say that they're contenders. They have a top-end ace. I mean, you got to look at this. North Carolina is 25-4. They're the cream of the crop when it comes to ACC baseball. They're going to be probably a 1 seed, top 16, get a 1 seed, host a regional by the time, this thing is all said and done. The discouraging part is you got swept at home. You couldn't find a day to win one, and especially the Friday game getting moved to Saturday, so it was a doubleheader. You couldn't get swept in the doubleheader, and then you couldn't lose the next day as well. My concern is just still the depth of the pitching. Jack Riddell went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, and had 10 strikeouts. That's a masterful performance. But then you go into the second game on Saturday. The starter only gives up 2 innings. Only goes 2 innings, gives up, I think, somewhere around 6 runs. 3 earned runs, 3 walks. And then you got to use 6 pitchers that day. And so then Sunday, your starter goes out there and gives up 8 earned runs, and you just use 6 guys out of the bullpen the day before. And so I think the offense is there, and I think their stud ace pitcher is there. I just worry about long series throughout the weekend and getting swept like that, because I don't think they have the depth pitching-wise to go toe-to-toe with some of the best teams in the ACC. But they don't need to. They just need to avoid getting swept or winning 2 of 3 instead of, again, the full sweep.
Well, and I think you can look at Clemson now, even though they were ranked going into that series. Look, it's still a ranked home sweep, but I think you can safely say that Clemson was probably overrated, because they're 2-7 now in the ACC, and they're in second to last place in the conference. And, so to answer the question, I'm kind of along the way of what you're saying. It's like, Notre Dame is 500 in the ACC right now. That'll be good enough to get you into the ACC tournament at the end of the season and have a chance to play your way above the bubble when it comes, about a month and a half from now. Yeah, about a month and a half, 2 months from now when it comes to selection time. But they've got a 5.46 ERA, to your point about the pitching depth. Like, that's just not going to cut it. They can hit.
That's even before the heart of the ACC schedule.
Right. They gave up 34. It's not just that you got swept by North Carolina. They gave up 34 runs to North Carolina in 3 games last weekend. They gave up 15 in one game and 13 in another game. Like, that's, regardless of how good North Carolina is, like, that is a major issue. A 5.46 ERA is not going to get it done, and that's still their biggest problem right now, because they're hitting better. They're hitting a little bit more consistently than what they have. They've worked on that. They've built on that the last couple of years, but the pitching is still a major issue for Notre Dame baseball. So I'm kind of like you. I think they're a little bit more contender than pretender. I think they've got a chance again to play themselves toward the bubble when it comes to the NCAA tournament at the end of the season. But they've got a series at Florida State coming up, and Florida State's in first place in the ACC right now. And that's just a couple of weeks away. They got to go down there to Tallahassee to play old Link Jarrett. So, yeah, it's they've got a chance, but the pitching has got to improve here down the stretch as well. If they're going to be legit, have a chance to do anything, one to get in the NCAA tournament. Like if I'm going, are they going to get a tournament bid this year? Scale of 1 to 10, I would put it squarely on a 5 right now, like right in the middle.
Man, so you're a complete toss-up.
Yeah, and it's because of the pitching. you like the old saying in baseball is you can't out hit bad pitching. And I'm not saying it's horrible, but it's also not great if your staff has a 5.46 ERA right now. They're pretty good, like when you look at strikeout to walk numbers and all that kind of stuff. But North Carolina put it in play early and often against them last weekend.
And the frustrating thing is the Notre Dame, it's not like in those games, Notre Dame's offense was like playing catch up. Like they were the ones landing the first punches and taking leads, and North Carolina was the ones, throwing the haymakers back and having, an 8-run inning, a 5-run inning, a 6-run inning. It's like you can't have those things happen. And especially when you're playing good teams and your offense is doing their part of the bargain.
Yeah, exactly. And Tommy is asking about home runs. I mean, North Carolina got a couple of home runs, and no, there weren't a lot. Like Notre Dame is actually a good defensive team as well. North Carolina just kind of sprayed it around and moved moved.
Again, when you use like 10 pitchers in the first 2 games, it's not a surprise that you give up 15 runs to a team like North Carolina on a Sunday. You just have to have more depth that you don't need to use 10 guys in a span of 2 games. So you can use some of that, depth on the third day. It's like, it's not manageable when the starting pitcher only goes 3 innings and gives up 5 runs. And now you've got to roll out 5-6 different guys from the bullpen.
Yep, exactly. Because the pitching is already an issue. The pitching depth, as you said, is already an issue for them. So Tommy also asked, what's the ideal conference for Notre Dame if it were possible for Notre Dame to switch conferences in baseball? I would say
I'm biased. Yeah, I'm biased. Go back to the good old Big East days. Good regional matchups. I mean, I think I saw something about the Big Ten, like hockey. I mean, the Big Ten has good baseball too. I mean, the ACC is like the cream of the crop when it comes to college baseball. Is there for? I'll tell you this though. I think Notre Dame baseball is doing better than Notre Dame men's basketball in terms of holding their own in the ACC.
That's true.
Like if you want to have a cross comparison,
yeah.
And I don't think it's particularly
some of that
close.
is skewed by Jarrett getting to the World Series a few years ago.
No, I'm talking about with Micah and
like if you compared Shrewsbury and Stifler, who have both been there for the same amount of time.
Yeah. I would say the baseball program, yes, it's probably underachieved and a little bit frustrating, but it's not as bad as what the basketball team has done.
That's true.
That's surprised. Like if I would have told you that, well, I mean, I guess the baseball team has had more success than the basketball team, so it might not be an overall surprise, but just seeing baseball do more essentially is, I guess, the part that's like, it really puts it into perspective.
Yeah. I think the Big East would be it because, one, you'd be in with a lot of other Catholic schools. That's kind of the direction that the Big East went after the last shift, when you had the football schools leave and all that kind of stuff. So like you don't have USF in the Big East like you used to for a while. You don't have Louisville obviously in there because they're in the ACC now. Like I see John saying Big Ten. And I mean, you could take more bus rides and stuff like that, but the Big Ten has had more multi-bid NCAA tournament seasons over the last 15 years than the Big East. So I think that it would just be like you would be like if you're Notre Dame, it would be a lot more comparable competition playing in the Big East than the Big Ten. Another baseball question for you. New San Francisco Giants manager Tony Vitello is the first Major League Baseball manager to lead a team after going directly from college to the big league ranks. The former head coach at the University of Tennessee lost his first 3 games before he finally got his first big league win earlier this week. A lot of people out there in the Bay Area doubting his ability to make it in the big leagues, considering his lack of professional experience. How do you think this experiment is going to go for the Giants and Vitello?
Yeah, I think that this is really interesting because not only does Vitello not have, the MLB experience, but what also you can double down on is at his time at Tennessee, maybe internally, but he wasn't the most respected guy because of kind of the overall arrogance, a guy who's just kind of, used to, winning, having some of the top recruits in the country. But ultimately, I think you could say underachieving also when it was all said and done at the end of the day. And so, again, it's interesting to see how someone could transition from being a little, egotistical, I would say, in the college realm to kind of being, the smaller guy in the room in comparison to an MLB team. I will say, I don't think that, first of all, I don't think that the things are going to drastically happen within his like first year, anything like that. But I think overall the experiment is going to go well because I think the San Francisco Giants are a well-run organization. And if you look at also the Giants roster, there's just a ton of talent where it would take a lot to go wrong. I mean, you have Willie Adames, you have Rafael Devers, you have a Luis Ariz, one of the best just contact hitters in all of baseball. You've got Matt Chapman. You've got one of the best young, catchers in the game as well. You've got Logan Webb as a starting pitcher. Like, he's got a lot of good resources in terms of a well-run organization that's won a good amount of World Series in the last 20 years. And also, it's not like this roster is just being stripped down to the bare bones, like he's got, again, a lot of really, like the Giants were a playoff team basically last year.
There's a big difference between managing a roster, managing a bullpen, managing the pitching situation over the course of 162 games when you're playing every day compared to college when you've got a 56-game regular season and you've got big chunks of time between games. Like once you get into an SEC schedule, you're playing an SEC, 3 games in a row, then you get a couple days off, maybe you host a midweek game, and then you play another game, series on the weekend. There's a big difference in how you've got to manage things day in and day out when you're talking about your bullpen and all those kind of things at the big league level. And I think the biggest question I have with him is it really feels like I'm not saying that no major league managers show emotion or have emotion. I mean, that's definitely there, but like he is known as a firebrand, like a very fiery, like arguing from the dugout about seemingly everything. That was the kind of reputation that he had when he was in college. And so like, I'm curious to see how that goes over at the major league level. Again, when you're doing it day after day after day, and maybe you're not winning as many games as you became accustomed to winning in college.
Yeah, I think that there is going to be some of that adversity there. I think the same, mannerisms and tactics from the college game aren't going to translate to the professional game. And these are professional athletes. And because it's the professionals, there's more consequences. Like you can't be chirping and getting thrown out of mini games type situation. And so I do think that there has to be a level of maturity, within the conduct. But, I hope that he's reflective enough to understand the fortune, how lucky he is to have that opportunity. And again, I would like to think an organization that's been as successful as the Giants would have done a little bit of like their due diligence of being like, okay,
you would hope
we see some of this stuff, but we're willing to look past it because we know how good of, like he had to present something in those interviews for them to be like, yes, this is the guy that we want as an organization that knows what it takes to win. I'm just not the biggest fan of the guy. So like admitting this is hard, but
I'm not either. So maybe that's why I'm seeing, like is this thing really gonna work out? Look, when you start 0-3, there were already, like people were on high alert out there. It is baseball, so I do think you have to take more of a long view than a short-term view. I mean, really, I think you've got to give him at least until the end of May until you really get a feel for how he is. But like some of the stuff that I've seen, some of the stories that I've read coming out of there, it's like this is like senior word salad, like saying a lot of words but not really saying very much, so people are already growing weary of that. So I don't know. I'm just a little dubious of how this thing is going to play out in the long run. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Charlie Sheen said on the All the Smoke podcast that he did steroids to get ready for the movie Major League, and as a result, he says he added 10 miles per hour to his fastball.
It's impressive, like I love when these actors, actresses buy in on the role completely. And, you see like 50 Cent did a movie where he was like, he lost a ton of weight. And, you've seen some of these other movies where guys get super, bulked up and they talk about how they did steroids. But to have the actual data to say that I added 10 miles per hour to my fastball because I was doing steroids for a movie, I think that's pretty impressive and cool at the same time.
I do too. And like, I could see Charlie Sheen, like doing it. I guess what it makes me think about though is, because Major League was back in the late 80s and we had something known as the steroid era, all through the 90s that literally blew up and kind of culminated with Barry Bonds. But if Charlie Sheen is adding 10, like how much do you think some of those elite, like a guy like Roger Clemens, who is accused of doing it, how much juice do you think that an actual elite athlete and an actual elite pitcher was able to add to his fastball?
Yeah, if someone like Charlie can add like 10 miles per hour, there's what's the best way to put this? I'm not surprised that there was a steroid era in baseball, because if just some average schmo can come in and start juicing and add 10 miles per hour, think about what the guys could do. And this is kind of hindsight because obviously we know a lot of people took steroids, but guys who do this professionally every day in practice, it's no wonder that they're like, oh, if there's no rules and regulations about this stuff, why am I not adding 2 miles per hour to my swing and 50 feet to my home runs and everything else that came from it?
Exactly. All right, well, that is going to do it for today. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good interaction from the YouTube chat today. We will be back, of course, tomorrow to finish up the week. It's this week has kind of flown by, actually. I don't know if it's flown by for you or not, but it's flown by.
Yeah, it's flown by. I because it's my last week of work, and I have literally nothing to do at work, so I've just been watching baseball games, getting an afternoon nap in, doing whatever I need to.
Good life if you can get it. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow. For Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com.